On April 8, 1990, millions of American families gathered around their television sets for what seemed like an extraordinary Sunday evening. ABC was about to air a 2-hour pilot for a surrealist mystery that didn't fit any existing television category. By the time the credits rolled on the Twin Peaks premiere, something had fundamentally shifted in television history. David Lynch had brought his cinematic vision to network television, and the medium would never be the same. But this wasn't just one show's breakthrough moment. The year 1990 would reshape television across every genre, from comedy to drama to documentaries, creating a landscape that still defines what we watch today. The television industry entered 1990 at a crossroads. The three major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, still dominated, but their grip was weakening. Cable television had grown from 56% of American households in 1985 to over 60% by 1990. The Fox network, launched in October 1986, was finally gaining traction with younger audiences. The rules that had governed television for 4 decades were about to be rewritten, and it would happen over the course of 12 remarkable months. The year had actually started 2 months earlier with a different kind of revolution. On January 1st, ITV premiered Mr. Bean, starring Rowan Atkinson as the nearly silent, childlike character who navigated everyday situations with absurd results. The show, which aired as occasional specials rather than a traditional series, used physical comedy that transcended language barriers. Atkinson, who had studied for a master's degree in electrical engineering at the Queen's College, Oxford, before pursuing comedy, created a character that felt both timeless and distinctly British. Mr. Bean's minimalist approach to comedy, few words, maximum physical expression, stood in stark contrast to the dialogue-heavy American sitcoms dominating the airwaves. 2 weeks later, on January 14th, The Simpsons moved to its permanent Sunday nighttime slot on Fox. The animated sitcom that had premiered in December 1989 was about to become a cultural phenomenon. By April, Bart Simpson's catchphrase, "Don't have a cow, man," had entered the national vocabulary. Schools across the country banned Bart Simpson t-shirts that read "Underachiever and Proud of It." The controversy only fueled the show's popularity. Matt Groening had created the Simpson family for short segments on The Tracy Ullman Show in 1987. But the full series that found its footing in early 1990 was something entirely different. The show satirized American family life, consumer culture, and authority figures with a sharpness that hadn't been seen in primetime animation since the Flintstones in the 1960s. The show's writer's room, which included future showrunners like Al Jean, Mike Rice, and Conan O'Brien, operated more like a comedy think tank than a traditional television writing staff. They incorporated references to literature, film, and politics that assumed audience intelligence rather than pandering to the lowest common denominator. When the show mocked Fox's own programming, the network let it air. The Simpsons became the first Fox show to break into the top 30 rated programs, finishing its first full season in 13th place. Then came the cultural earthquake. On April 8th, Twin Peaks premiered on ABC. David Lynch and Mark Frost had created something that didn't fit any existing category. The pilot episode drew 34.6 million viewers, making it the highest-rated television movie of the year. Lynch brought his surrealist filmmaking style from movies like Blue Velvet directly to network television, featuring dream sequences, abstract symbolism, and a deliberately glacial pace. Agent Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, investigated Laura Palmer's murder while experiencing visions that blurred reality and nightmare. Twin Peaks proved that network television could be genuinely weird and still attract mainstream audiences. For one season, America became obsessed with asking, who killed Laura Palmer? While ABC was experimenting with surrealism, Fox was building its empire on irreverence. Just 1 week after Twin Peaks premiered on April 15th, Fox launched In Living Color. Created by Keenan Ivory Wayans, the sketch comedy show featured a cast that included his siblings Damon, Kim, Sean, and Marlon Wayans, along with Jim Carrey, Tommy Davidson, David Alan Grier, and Jamie Foxx. The show aired directly opposite NBC's Saturday Night Live, and it wasn't trying to be a respectful alternative. In Living Color was louder, faster, and more willing to push boundaries than its older competitor. The show's Fly Girls dance troupe, which featured a young Jennifer Lopez, became as famous as many of the sketches. Wayans and his cast created recurring characters like Homie the Clown, who refused to entertain suburban white kids, and the effeminate film critics, Men on Film. These sketches tackled race, sexuality, and class with a directness that made network executives nervous. Fox gave Wayans creative control, and the show became a launching pad for multiple careers while forcing SNL to reconsider its own approach to comedy. But even as new shows were breaking ground, 1990 also marked a turning point for television's old guard. Cheers, which had dominated NBC's Thursday night lineup since 1982, was entering its 9th season. The show had already survived its biggest transition 3 years earlier when Shelley Long departed and Kirstie Alley joined the cast as Rebecca Howe. By 1990, Cheers remained a ratings powerhouse, still drawing massive audiences to the fictional Boston bar where everybody knew your name. The show's ensemble cast, Ted Danson, Woody Harrelson, Rhea Perlman, George Wendt, and John Ratzenberger, had become television royalty. NBC had built its entire Thursday night lineup around Cheers, creating a comedy block that defined appointment television. The show's ability to balance sharp writing with genuine heart had set the standard for workplace comedies. But even as Cheers continued its successful run, the television landscape was shifting beneath it. Twin Peaks was challenging what television could be. The Simpsons was proving animation could be sophisticated. The cultural conversation was moving elsewhere, and Cheers represented the kind of traditional sitcom that would soon face extinction. The show would run until 1993, but 1990 marked the beginning of its gradual descent from cultural dominance, even as it remained one of television's most reliable performers. Not everything in 1990 was a triumph. On July 25th, comedian Roseanne Barr delivered what would become known as one of the worst national anthem performances in American history before a San Diego Padres game. Barr, whose sitcom Roseanne was one of ABC's biggest hits, screeched through the Star-Spangled Banner in an off-key performance that she later said was meant as comedy. She concluded by grabbing her crotch and spitting, mimicking baseball players. The crowd booed. President George H.W. Bush called the performance disgraceful. Barr received death threats. The controversy didn't hurt her show's ratings, but it marked a moment when television celebrity collided with traditional patriotism in uncomfortable ways. September brought another wave of innovation. On September 10th, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air premiered on NBC. Will Smith had found fame as a rapper, but by 1990 he owed the IRS $2.8 million in back taxes. The sitcom became his lifeline. Quincy Jones had seen Smith perform and thought he'd be perfect for a show about a street-smart teenager from Philadelphia who moves in with his wealthy relatives in Bel-Air. The show's premise allowed it to explore class differences within the African-American community, a topic rarely addressed on television. Smith played a heightened version of himself opposite James Avery's authoritative Uncle Phil, a successful lawyer who represented Black achievement and respectability. The show balanced broad comedy with moments of genuine social commentary. Smith's charisma carried the show, but the writing gave him material that allowed for both physical comedy and emotional depth. Network television wasn't the only place where innovation was happening. On September 23rd, Ken Burns premiered The Civil War on PBS. The 9-episode, 11-hour documentary aired over 5 consecutive nights and redefined what documentary filmmaking could achieve on television. Burns used the Ken Burns effect of slowly panning and zooming across still photographs to create movement and drama from archival images. He incorporated first-person accounts read by actors including Sam Waterston, Julie Harris, and Jason Robards. Historian Shelby Foote became an unlikely television star with his detailed knowledge and folksy delivery. The documentary drew 39 million viewers over its 9 episodes, making it the most watched program ever on PBS. It proved that audiences would commit to long-form documentary storytelling if the craft justified the time investment. 10 days earlier, on September 13th, Law & Order had debuted on NBC, created by Dick Wolf. The show's structure was revolutionary in its simplicity. Each episode spent the first half following police detectives investigating a crime, then shifted to prosecutors trying the case. The format allowed the show to explore both procedural elements and legal ethics within a single hour. The opening title card, "In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories," became one of television's most recognizable intros. The show's ripped-from-the-headlines approach meant cases often resembled recent news stories, giving episodes a sense of immediacy and relevance. Law & Order's success would eventually spawn a franchise that included multiple spin-offs and made Wolf one of the most powerful producers in television. The reality programming that would later dominate television was taking its first steps. America's Funniest Home Videos, which had premiered on ABC on November 26, 1989, became a Sunday night staple in 1990. The show featured viewer-submitted videos of accidents, pranks, and cute children, representing an early form of user-generated content. Bob Saget hosted with wholesome commentary that made testicular injuries and faceplants feel family-friendly. The show's success proved that audiences enjoyed watching real people in embarrassing situations, a lesson that would eventually spawn entire networks dedicated to reality programming. The cable landscape was also evolving. Comedy Central launched on April 1, 1990, from the merger of the Comedy Channel and Hey. The network initially struggled to define itself, but it represented the increasing fragmentation of television audiences. Viewers no longer needed to gather around the 3 major networks. Specialized programming for specific audiences was becoming economically viable. The technical aspects of television were also changing. More households had VCRs by 1990, which meant shows could be recorded and watched later. This threatened the traditional advertising model, but also allowed shows to build audiences through word of mouth and repeat viewings. Twin Peaks benefited enormously from VCR recordings. Viewers could re-watch episodes to catch details they'd missed. The Simpsons packed so many visual jokes into each frame that multiple viewings revealed new layers. Television was becoming something you could study rather than simply watch once and forget. The year 1990 established templates that television still follows. The Simpsons showed that animated shows could run for decades while maintaining cultural relevance. Law & Order proved that procedurals could sustain multiple spin-offs by following a consistent format. Twin Peaks demonstrated that cult followings could justify revivals decades later. In Living Color launched careers and showed that sketch comedy could succeed outside of Saturday Night Live's shadow. These weren't just successful shows, they were proof that taking risks could pay off, that audiences were hungrier for innovation than executives had believed. Television in 1990 was still a medium dominated by networks and scheduled programming. The streaming revolution was more than a decade away, but the seeds of television's future were planted in that year. Shows that respected audience intelligence, that pushed boundaries, that tried new formats, these were the ones that endured. The year proved that television could be more than background noise or lowest common denominator entertainment. It could be art, social commentary, and cultural touchstone all at once. What show from 1990 do you think had the biggest impact on television? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into TV history, subscribe for more documentaries about the entertainment that shaped our world.